The creek lay dry under a sky the color of gunmetal. Summer in the desert didn't end in a blaze, it withered slowly, until even the lizards looked tired and the wind forgot how to move. Nokos had walked the long trail home with nothing but the echo of his own breath and the smell of rabid blood drying on his fingers. He hadn't spoken to a soul in 3 days, not since that trader asked him, with a laugh too loud, if his kind still slept with tomahawks under their pillows. He didn't answer then. And he didn't now, either, not when he saw it. A sack. Burlap. Torn at one corner. Lying too neatly at the base of a mesquite tree near the bend of the wash. Nokos didn't stop walking, not right away. He passed it like he'd pass a dead snake or a rusted tin pan, just another thing abandoned in a land where things didn't last. But the silence behind him changed. Subtle. Shifted like breath catching in a child's throat. He turned. One step closer. The sack didn't move at first. But then came the whisper. So soft it nearly drowned in the wind. Please, take them off. Nokos stilled. His shadow fell over the sack, stretching long and bent across the red dirt. The words weren't the sound of trickster spirits, nor the wind curling through dry grass. It was a child. Alive. He knelt slowly, as if the earth might break beneath him. His fingers brushed the rough twine knot at the top of the bag, tight, cruel. He loosened it without speaking. The sack peeled back like old skin. And then he saw her. She was no more than 8. Pale, dust-covered skin. Straw-colored hair knotted in places, with dried blood at her temple. But it was her face that made him pause. Someone had drawn on it, charcoal or soot, 2 circles around her eyes, jagged lines down her cheeks, a cross on her forehead. As if to mock. As if to mark. Her eyes opened. Green, dulled by dehydration, but steady. She did not cry. She simply looked up at the towering shadow that was him and said again, quieter this time, "Please take them off." He reached forward. Slow. Careful. She flinched, but not from fear. From expectation. His fingers moved across her cheek, rubbing the black stain. It didn't come off easily. Whoever had done it meant it to stay. He wrapped her in his deerskin coat, lifted her like a bundle of reeds. She barely weighed more than a coyote. Her ribs showed, her knees scraped. As he walked, she didn't ask where they were going. Only once did she whisper, with her head pressed against his chest, "I thought I died." He carried her the 2 miles back to his shelter. It was a half-dugout cabin, tucked beneath the lip of an outcropping. Built not for comfort, but for survival. He laid her on the buffalo hide by the fire and poured water into a clay cup. She drank it like someone who had once been punished for wanting too much. There was a silence between them then, heavy and oddly peaceful. Outside, cicadas buzzed low. Inside, the fire cracked but did not speak. "Are you going to give me back?" she asked, her voice small and grave. He looked at her for a long time. Said nothing. Then turned back to the stew pot. She picked at the dried cornbread he placed before her. When her fingers brushed the crust, she froze. A moment passed before she lifted it slowly, as if expecting a slap. He noticed. But said nothing still. Her gaze kept returning to his hands, broad, dark, callous like rawhide, and then to his face. She studied his high cheekbones, the black hair tied back with a piece of twine, the scar along his jaw like a crack through granite. She didn't ask what tribe. She didn't ask his name. "Mama said the good ones don't talk too much," she murmured, cradling the cornbread as if it might vanish. "Said they just stay." She fell asleep that night wrapped in his coat, curled beside the fire like a pup too weary to dream. Nokos sat awake, carving silently. A small horse from cedar. His knife moved without thought. The act of shaping something gentle calmed the roaring that had started in his chest the moment he saw the sack. He'd seen things in this land. Children lost to dust. Women taken for profit or pride. White men who called him savage and Apache alike, depending on the season. But never had he seen a child left in such a way, not out here, where the buzzards always came. Before dawn, she stirred. Her voice cracked through the dark. "Did you ever have a name?" He answered. "Just once." "Yes." She nodded and didn't ask more. In the morning, he bathed her wounds with warm water and bearberry leaves. She winced but didn't cry. As he dabbed at the black marks on her face, she whispered, "They said the devil marked me. Grandma drew it. Said no one would want me now." He paused. The black smudge on his fingers burned colder than ice. Her name was Ellie Mae. She said it plainly, with the honesty only children carry. Her mother's name was Greta. She didn't say where she was, only that she'd cried the last time Ellie saw her. "She told me not to scream when they put me in," Ellie whispered. "Said it'd be better if I stayed quiet." He didn't ask who they were. Instead, he stepped outside and stared into the horizon. Smoke curled from the town miles east, too far to hear its gossip but close enough for cruelty to travel. He didn't trust the town. Never had. But he knew this much: a child doesn't end up in a sack for no reason. Later that day, he caught her watching the hawks above. She asked what they were saying. "They don't speak our tongue," he said. "Maybe they do," she said, "and we're just too loud to hear 'em." That night, she tucked the carved cedar horse beneath her chin as she slept. He sat near the fire again, blade idle in his palm. The stars hung low, thick with silence. He should have taken her to someone else. A preacher. A doctor. A woman with softer hands. But there she was, in his cabin, under his roof, with her cracked lips and painted face and trembling fingers that trusted him anyway. A part of him, a deep part he'd buried after the raids, after the treaties, after the loss, told him he wouldn't be able to give her up. Not now. Not ever. And though no declaration passed his lips, the firelight flickered like it understood. Some things weren't meant to be spoken. They were simply meant to stay. The church bell rang sharp against the morning heat, cutting through the dust like a blade through cotton. Townsfolk clustered beneath the white steeple, fanning themselves with hymn sheets, murmuring about salvation between gulps of lukewarm lemonade. The talk that day wasn't scripture, it was scandal. "She's gone," whispered Dora Huxley, her gray-gloved hands shaking just enough to draw sympathy but not suspicion. "My Ellie. Stolen. By that Apache." Mouths opened. Gasps fluttered. A few turned to Sheriff Bly, who folded his arms tighter. The Huxleys had status at land, pews, and the illusion of virtue, but even he shifted uncomfortably under Dora's tearless sobs. "She was taken last night. Vanished. Sack missing. Fence cut. Tracks leading out big feet. Barefoot. Savages," someone muttered. "Savage wouldn't steal a child," said another, but quiet enough not to be heard twice. Back at the cabin, miles from their pious theater, Nokos boiled water over the fire while Ellie sat on a wooden crate, her feet swinging in slow rhythm. Her cheeks were cleaner now, he'd scrubbed the marks until only ghosts of black soot lingered. But the stain on her heart? That lingered deeper. She held the cedar horse in both hands like it might disappear. Its legs were still rough, its mane unfinished. But it was hers. In a world that left her in a sack, someone had made her something with care. "I don't remember the last time I got to sit," she said suddenly, watching a lizard dart up the log wall. "Not without someone sayin' I was in the way." Nokos didn't reply, just slid a bowl of broth across the floor toward her. She sipped carefully, lips chapped. Then, "You ever been locked in a closet?" He shook his head. "They put me in there when I spilled milk. Said I needed to learn silence. Grandma said I talked like a stray dog." She smiled faintly. "Mama used to slip me sugar cubes when she thought no one saw." Nokos' jaw tightened. The wind outside caught a chime made from bones, rattling like forgotten memories. Ellie didn't notice. She pointed to a jar on the shelf. "What's that one do?" "4 fevers." "And that one?" "Snakebite." Her voice softened. You got anything for shame? His hand stilled. The wooden spoon hovered over the pot, steam rising between them. That one, he said quietly, takes time. They didn't speak again until evening. She helped feed the chickens, trailing behind him like a shadow. When he hammered in a fence post, she handed him nails. When he fetched water, she carried the tin cup, no matter how many times she stumbled. Later, under the peach-colored sky, Nokos noticed her staring at her reflection in the basin. She was trying to scrub the faint lines off her cheeks again, so fiercely her skin reddened. He gently took the cloth from her. "They're not on you," he said. "They're on them." She looked up. Her eyes, so green they nearly glowed in twilight, searched his. "They said I was marked." "You were." "By hate. Not by God." In town, the sheriff had followed the trail for half a mile before losing it near the rocks. Silas Yarrow, watching from his horse, clicked his tongue. "You think he took her to harm her?" Bly hesitated. "Don't know." Silas spit into the dust. "Well, it don't look right. Him, out there. Alone. Then a girl disappears. You gonna tell the town you did nothing?" Bly shifted his weight. "You think the Huxleys are clean?" "Don't matter. They're respected." The sun burned down, and judgment bloomed like weeds in a dry field. By the third night, Nokos began preparing a second bedroll. Ellie asked if she could sleep by the fire, not in the corner. "Not 'cause I'm scared," she clarified. "Just 'cause it's warmer." He nodded. That night, she slept curled into the deerskin again, cedar horse tucked beside her. The next morning, she woke to find him carving again. This time, not a horse, but a face. Gentle. Strong-jawed. Eyes that watched. "Is that me?" "No." "Who, then?" He didn't answer. She didn't press. That same day, Ellie found a copper feather on the trail behind the coop. She ran to him, holding it up like treasure. "You think it's from a hawk?" He looked at it closely, nodded once. "Then I'm keepin' it," she said, "for Mama. When I see her again." That evening, she knelt in the dirt and buried the feather, marking it with 3 stones. She used to say God would find us, even in the dark. When she rose, she took Nokos' hand without asking. He let her. Meanwhile, in town, Dora sat before the church ladies, her fingers trembling dramatically as she poured tea. "I warned Greta," she said. "Told her she was birthing a curse. That child wasn't normal from the start. Always staring at things. Making up stories. Always clinging to her mama's leg like a barn rat. She had marks on her face, didn't she?" Well, one woman asked, hushed. "She made them," Dora lied, voice velvet smooth. "Drew them herself. Possessed, maybe. Or spoiled." The women nodded. If you said something often enough in town, it became truth. That was how shame worked, it didn't need evidence. Just echo. At the cabin, Nokos built a new chair from scrap wood. Ellie watched from the doorway, her chin resting on the frame. She didn't ask who it was for. But she smiled when he placed it beside hers. Later that night, she asked, "Why do you stay out here?" He looked up from the fire. "People don't listen well in town," he said. "People don't see well in town either," she whispered. A quiet settled then, warm and unbroken. She leaned against his shoulder. Just once. He didn't move away. The next morning, she was up before him. She had smeared blue clay on her face, messy and soft. "I thought maybe if I put something new on it, the old stuff wouldn't matter." He said nothing. But he reached out, wiped one side clean with his thumb, then gently handed her a polished mirror. She looked. Blinked. "Still me," she said. "But not hidin' now." He nodded. A hawk passed overhead, shadow slicing across the yard like a silent promise. She followed it with her eyes and said softly, "Mama's not dead." He didn't question. "She's somewhere dark." I heard her cryin' when they tied the sack. I think she tried to stop them. Nokos stood. The sun hit his face just right, and the scar on his jaw shone pale like a riverbed. I'll find her, he said. Ellie's voice trembled. You believe me? He placed a hand over her heart, then his own. We don't lie from here, he said. As dusk fell, she clutched his arm with a whisper. You're not what they say. He looked to the horizon, to the place where smoke curled again from a ranch with white fences and rotting truth beneath the porch. Neither are you, he replied. And though neither smiled, the silence between them bent just slightly toward hope. Nokos watched as morning mist rose from the grass like breath from a sleeping giant. The land stirred soft and slow, unwilling to wake too quickly. Beside the coop, Ellie bent low, feeding corn to the hens, her toes curling against the cool dirt. She had a song in her mouth, tuneless, whispered, but it made the air feel lighter. He didn't know what it was. It wasn't meant for anyone but the wind. He crouched nearby, whittling a handle for a broken bucket. The soft scrape of his knife, her gentle humming, and the rustle of feathers built something fragile between them, an unspoken trust, like deer easing into a clearing. Did you always live alone? She asked, not turning. He didn't answer at first. Just smoothed the wood in his palm. For a long time, he said. Longer than you've been alive. Ellie nodded slowly, wiping her hands on her dress. She had stopped asking why he didn't talk much. She liked his silences, they didn't bruise like other people's words. She came to sit beside him, knees drawn up, face tilted to the sun. Her skin was healing, though still flushed where the ink had stained. She touched her cheek and said, You think it's ever gonna go? He looked at her face, not with pity, but study. The smudged black lines, faint now, had become something else. A wound carried like a name. A story too cruel for her age. Yes, he said. But not just from the outside. Ellie thought about that. Then, Mama told me people get ugly when they're scared. Not just their faces, their hearts too. He nodded. She watched his hands work. Did anyone ever draw on you? She asked. He paused. One breath longer than usual. Not with ink. She leaned against his arm like it was a tree she trusted to hold. He didn't move. Later that day, they walked to the edge of a stream. She took off her boots, what was left of them, and stepped into the water. It was cold. She squealed softly, but didn't jump out. She knelt and splashed her face. I want it gone, she whispered. The marks. I don't want to look like a warning sign. Nokos knelt beside her, cupped water in his palms, and gently poured it over her cheeks. He rubbed the skin with the soft cloth he'd brought, marshmallow roots steeped into the fibers. The black faded further. Still not gone. Ellie looked at the reflection. It's better, she said. It's beginning, he replied. They sat together in the grass until her dress dried, listening to dragonflies buzz over the reeds. The sun burned slowly westward, as if it, too, was reluctant to leave. That night, by the fire, Ellie took her cedar horse and placed it on the table he had made her. She had begun lining up small things there, buttons, stones, a broken locket she found under the floorboards. Mama had a necklace like this, she said, holding it up. Except hers had a picture inside. Of me. He looked at the locket. Its hinge was rusted shut. He would open it later, he decided. Ellie sat on her knees, folding a rag into a pillow. I think Mama's still somewhere near. I dream about her. Her hands trying to untie the sack. Nokos stared into the fire, listening. She called me her baby bird, Ellie murmured. Said I had soft bones and a big heart. Said one day I'd be free. He turned to her. You are. She smiled a little. Not all the way. Silence again. But this time, her eyes searched his. If I was yours, she asked slowly, would you still let me cry sometimes? He looked at her long. I'd never stop you. She nodded. Then I'd be yours. The next morning, they went into the woods deeper than usual. Noko showed her how to set snares, where wild honey might be hidden. She climbed a log and declared herself queen of the quiet. "You think Mama could have gotten away if she'd screamed louder?" she asked from her perch. "No," Noko said. "Sometimes screaming just tells the cruel ones where to aim." She was quiet a while, then asked, "Do people like the Huxleys ever stop hating?" "No. But the town might stop listening." That afternoon, she drew a new line on her cheek, deliberate, soft, a swirl like wind. He watched from across the yard. "It's not to hide it," she explained. "It's so it belongs to me now." He didn't respond. But that night, he placed a polished mirror by her bedroll. In town, the talk grew sharper. Sheriff Bly tried to quiet the rumors, but Silas Yarrow had already started whispering that Nokos was hiding something dangerous. "He's got that child," Silas spat, standing outside the mercantile. "And he's teaching her Apache lies." "What kind of lies?" asked the blacksmith. "Lies that make her forget her kind. Forget her shame." The blacksmith paused. "Maybe that ain't a lie. Maybe it's a gift." Silas scowled. But gossip travels faster than truth in a small town. Back at the homestead, Ellie began gathering wildflowers and laying them across the fence. She said it was for the ones who'd been hurt but never seen. "I think flowers are like quiet people. You gotta stop walkin' to notice 'em." She tucked one behind Noko's ear when he bent to fix the well. "You got a face like stone, but it don't scare me," she told him. He looked at her, this girl with dust on her dress and defiance in her shoulders, and said, "Then you're stronger than most." That evening, the air turned orange with twilight. She sat on the cabin steps, bare feet swinging. "You think we could find Mama?" He stared at the horizon. "If she's alive, yes. And if she's not?" He didn't answer. She nodded. "Then I'll keep the feather till I know." Inside the cabin, she tucked it into her makeshift drawer. The cedar horse stood beside it. The carved face Nokos had made sat near the window, watching. "You know what I think," she said as she curled into her blanket. "I think marks don't make people evil. But hiding them? That's where the bad starts." He tucked the blanket tighter around her, not with words, but with presence. That night, a storm curled far off on the horizon. Thunder rolled faint as a drumbeat. She didn't flinch. The marks on her face weren't hers to bear anymore. Not alone. And somewhere beyond the dark, a reckoning waited. The sun rose pale that morning, as if even the heavens were unsure what the day might bring. A brittle hush covered the town, tight-lipped wives hanging laundry, wary eyes behind curtained windows, and children told to stay off the main road. Word had drifted in like wildfire smoke. He was coming. Nokos didn't wear war paint. He didn't carry a rifle. Just walked, boots slow against the dry-packed dirt, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing his face. Beside him, barefoot and sure, walked Ellie Mae, her chin lifted, her small fingers curled into the edge of his coat. She no longer tried to scrub her cheeks. The faint swirls remained, not stains now but symbols, hers. The town had drawn them to mark her shame. But she walked straight through its center like a torch no rain could snuff out. The whispers started before they reached the well. "That's her. Is that the one they said was cursed? Why's he got her? That Apache? Where's the sheriff?" Nokos stopped just short of the saloon porch, eyes steady on the sheriff's office. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The hush around them was louder than any call. Sheriff Bly stepped out, hat in hand, face older than yesterday. "I heard," Bly said slowly, "you found the girl." Ellie stepped forward. "I wasn't lost," she said. "I was thrown away." A gasp rang sharp as a slap. Bly blinked. "You all right, child?" "She's not alone," Nokos said. His voice was low, even. "But her mother is." At the mention of Greta, Dora Huxley pushed her way through the crowd forming under the storefront awnings. Her hair was pinned just so. Gloves pristine. But her mouth twitched at the corners like something venomous hid behind her practiced sorrow. She doesn't know what she's saying, Dora said quickly. That girl has been confused. Stolen. God knows what she's been filled with. Ellie turned to her, something ancient in her eyes. You put me in the sack. You said I was the devil's badge. Dora staggered, mouth agape. She lies. She doesn't, Noko said, louder now. All eyes turned. For once, they listened. She says her mother's still alive, he continued. Tied. Hidden. You'll take us to her. Or I will tear apart every outbuilding on your land. Clem Huxley stepped forward now, sweat already blooming through his collar. You're threatening decent folks. No, Nokos said. I'm ending what you started. For a beat, no one moved. Then Silas Yarrow cleared his throat. This ain't your law, Apache. We settle things the right way here. You didn't settle this, Nokos said. You buried it. Just like her. Ellie's voice broke the silence again. She's in the smokehouse. I heard her. I remember the rats. No one laughed. No one denied her. Bly looked to Dora, then to Clem. Something shifted in his spine. Take me there, the sheriff said. Dora's eyes flared. You'll listen to them over us? I'll listen to the child, Bly said quietly. And the law's the law. Half the town followed, silent, guilty, uncertain. Down the dusty road, past the apple trees, toward the Huxley estate with its polished porch and rotting soul. Clem led the way, steps faltering. Dora trailed, face pale, muttering scripture under her breath like it could undo what they'd done. Behind the barn stood the smokehouse, door bolted from outside. Bly kicked it open. Inside, bound to a chair with frayed rope and a dry cloth across her mouth, sat Greta May, eyes wild, skin pale, hands trembling from hunger and silence. Ellie screamed. Mama! She ran to her, ripping the cloth off, clawing at the knots. Noko stepped in, sliced the ropes clean with his knife, and caught Greta as she slumped forward. Greta sobbed, not from pain but from the sound of her daughter's voice. I thought they'd killed you, she choked. I thought I'd buried you in my sleep. You didn't, Ellie whispered. He found me. Greta looked up at Nokos. Her mouth tried to form thanks but failed. He nodded once. Enough. Outside, the crowd had gone still. Sheriff Bly turned to Clem and Dora. You tied a woman to a chair. Left a child for dead. Why? Dora opened her mouth. But this time, no words came. Only the emptiness where shame should have bloomed long ago. You said we were cursed, Ellie said. But we weren't. The townsfolk didn't cheer. They didn't shout. But they parted as Nokos carried Greta down the path, Ellie clinging to his arm. They moved like a procession. Like something sacred had just passed through and left the rest behind. Later that night, back at the cabin, Greta sat wrapped in blankets beside the fire. Her voice was hoarse, her frame shaking, but her eyes stayed locked on Ellie. The girl didn't leave her side once. I prayed, Greta whispered. Even when I couldn't speak. I prayed someone would hear us. Ellie placed the cedar horse in her lap. He did. Nokos sat just beyond the firelight, whittling quietly again. A new piece. Another figure. Greta turned to him. You saved my child. You didn't have to. I couldn't leave her, he said. Most would've. I'm not most. Greta nodded slowly. Then, do you think people can change? He didn't look up. Yes. But not all of them. She took his hand, then rough, warm, steady. Ellie curled against her mother, her eyes already fluttering closed. I didn't get to say goodbye, Greta whispered. You don't have to, Nokos said. You're here. Outside, wind moved through the grass like breath returning to a once cursed place. And in the town, doors shut gently. No one spoke of the Huxleys that night. Not because they didn't know, but because shame, when seen, becomes contagious. They'd looked away for too long. And now they had seen. The sky bloomed with apricot light, spilling over the valley like a promise. Birds stirred in the cottonwoods. The earth exhaled dew, and a new kind of stillness blanketed the land, not the silence of fear, but the hush of healing. Ellie stood barefoot on the porch, dress hem brushing her ankles, her fingers tangled around a steaming tin cup. Her face was free now. The old marks had faded, and the soft curves of her cheeks caught the dawn like polished stone. She hadn't drawn on herself since the morning she'd stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "It's mine again." Inside, Greta dozed lightly beside the hearth. Her health returned slow as spring thaw. The bruises on her wrists had yellowed, her eyes had gained weight. She didn't cry as much anymore. Sometimes she sang old lullabies. Half-remembered things she used to hum when Ellie was still in swaddling cloth. The sound stitched the cabin together like thread across a ripped seam. Nokos fed the chickens. He moved the same way he always had, deliberate, silent, but something in his posture had softened. He wore the air of someone no longer waiting for winter. Ellie had begun calling him our tall one. Not father. Not mister. Just that. And somehow it suited him better than anything else ever had. Greta leaned in the doorway now, watching both of them. She didn't say much in the early hours. Her voice was still regaining strength, but her gaze was whole again. Steady. Thankful. Nokos finished scattering feed, then looked up. She slept well, he asked. Greta nodded. The best in weeks. They didn't speak more. They didn't need to. The language between them was shaped by glances, gestures, two people who understood that words had limits, but care did not. By noon, Ellie was painting stones with berry juice. She'd built a small line of them leading to the stream. So Mama knows the way home, she said. Even if she forgets again. Each rock had a mark, swirls, dots, small suns. Not to cover anything. Just to brighten what already was. Later, they gathered wood together. Greta walked without wobbling now. She carried the lighter bundles, insisted on it. I won't be a ghost in my own life, she'd told Nokos days ago. And he hadn't argued. That evening, something strange happened. A wagon rolled down the path. It was Sheriff Bly. Alone. He rode slowly, hat in hand. Not armed, not loud. Just a man heavy with duty. Nokos stepped out to meet him, Ellie peeking behind the doorframe. Bly dismounted with a sigh. Town's talkin' less. Not gone, just quieter. Folks don't know how to face what they allowed. They don't have to, Nokos said. As long as they stop turning away. Bly nodded. Dora and Clem are gone. Took the night coach west. Left everything. Greta joined them then. Her presence shifted the moment. She stood taller than before. She looked the sheriff in the eye. I don't need apologies, she said. But I won't be quiet anymore. No one's a skin you two, Bly replied. There's land south of town. Not claimed yet. If you want it, it's yours. Fresh start. No strings. Greta looked to Nokos. His eyes didn't flicker. Thank you, she said. The sheriff hesitated, then added, one more thing. Ellie asked about school. At that, the girl stepped outside. I can go? Bly looked at her, at the face once marked by cruelty, now shaded by the golden light of dusk. If you want, he said. No one'll stop you this time. She turned to Nokos. Will you walk me there? He crouched beside her. Every day. And just like that, the moment passed, as gentle as a prayer set in wind. By nightfall, the stars unfurled themselves in quiet celebration. Nokos sat outside, carving again. This time, the wood was smoother. He was making a cradle. Greta joined him, blanket around her shoulders. For Ellie? He looked up. For what comes next? She reached for his hand. Their fingers met, not rushed, not shaken. Just steady. I never thought I'd live past the shame, she whispered. You didn't, he said. You outlived it. A beat passed. Then she laid his hand gently over her belly. It took him a moment to understand. When he did, he closed his eyes. Inside the cabin, Ellie was already asleep, arms wrapped around her cedar horse, the one that still smelled faintly of wildwood and safety. The fire crackled low. Outside, wind moved over the land like a lullaby. Once, she had been thrown away like something rotten. Now, she was the beginning of a family. Now, the world would remember her not for the marks others left, but for the ones she made herself. The sack hadn't buried her. It had introduced her to the one soul who would never look away. And if you're listening, if you've ever been tossed aside, marked by someone else's fear, remember this. Your beginning might not look like anyone else's. It might be wrapped in pain. But it still counts. It still blooms.